Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for being here for our panel on Ridgewood's proposed ordinance regarding gas-powered leaf blowers. If you have any questions, my name is Larissa Brooks, first of all. Thank you very much for coming. If you have any questions, we're asking you to write them down on a card with a pencil. They're in the back, that's on the back table over there, and hand your question to me. This way we can make sure that all of the questions are read on the microphone, so people who are watching at home or in the future will be able to hear all the questions. And right now I'd like to hand this over to Pamela Perron, our deputy mayor.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. On behalf of Green Ridgewood and the Ridgewood Public Library, we'd like to welcome you, and welcome to all the people on Zoom who are also watching. We have 4 panelists tonight, and we will have each of them speak for about 15 minutes, and then we will have a question and answer period afterwards. As Larissa mentioned, there are pencil and paper out there in the back, and if you have a question and you've written it up, hopefully legibly, we will raise your hand, and Larissa or Sophia from Green Ridgewood will come and fetch it from you. And the other questions from Zoom participants will be picked up if you put it in the chat. And let's see, that's it for housekeeping. We also have in the back the proposed ordinance, which you can take a look at, and some literature from the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions on gas-powered leaf blowers. The ordinance, I would like to say, is really very, it's a draft of a draft of a draft. This is the starting point for our community to start talking about this. We want to hear from you. What are the problems? Do you have any possible solutions? These are the things that we want to get started talking about. I think it's fair to say nobody likes the noise from gas-powered leaf blowers, but there is also the public health consideration. There's how they affect our environment, and these are things that our panelists will be speaking to tonight. Just a very brief outline of the ordinance as it stands right now. This is not written in stone, but the idea is to limit the gas-powered leaf blowers that are 2-stroke machines. So in a gas combustion engine, a piston goes in and comes out. That's 2 strokes. The 4-stroke engine would be permitted all year round. So that goes in, comes out twice. So that's the 4 strokes. The 2-stroke engine is a more inefficient, dirtier machine, pollutes more, and that's why it's drafted, this ordinance, to focus on regulating the 2-stroke engine. The idea is to allow landscapers and residents to use the 2-stroke engine when they need it most. In the fall for 2 months during when they have to clean up the leaves, and in 2 months in the spring when the big cleanups happen after winter. Those the dates are October 15th to December 15th and March 15th to May 15th. Subject to the village manager extending those dates if the weather requires it. So conversely, 8 months out of the year, 2-stroke engines would be prohibited. You wouldn't be able to use them because those are the times when you don't need them as much. We wanted the public's input on this. So we sent it to all the landscapers we could find in Ridgewood. And we also sent it to the New Jersey Landscape Contractors Association. And I have to thank all the landscapers and their trade association because many of them wrote back to me very thoughtful letters. Consider this, what about the batteries? All kinds of things that they brought up, and also let their clients know about this so that we got many letters from residents, and on both sides. Some people said, your ordinance doesn't go far enough. You should ban all gas-powered lawn equipment. Other people said, this is terrible. Our landscapers are going to have to charge us more money, and we already are paying high taxes. So there are arguments on both sides. And so the current proposal is not written in stone, and we welcome your questions, and we'll get to those after these brief presentations by our speakers. Our first speaker is Nancy Adams. She has been active on many community issues, beginning with her involvement in the League of Women Voters and in founding a business improvement district in her hometown of Maplewood. She has served as township committee woman in that town since 2015 and also has served on her planning board. Ms. Adams was instrumental in establishing a 12-month ban on all gas-powered leaf blowers in Maplewood. She is certified in downtown management by the National Main Street Center and has consulted in and managed downtown districts in the state since 1996. Her day job, and where I met her, is as executive director of Summit Downtown, Inc. Our next speaker will be Dr. Tibb. Dr. Tibb did his medical residency and fellowship at Albert Einstein and Montefiore Medical Centers in the Bronx. He is board certified in pulmonary medicine, critical care, neurocritical care, palliative care, and internal medicine. I've never met somebody who has that many board certifications. Dr. Tibb's office is in Paramus, and he is affiliated with Valley Hospital, Englewood, and Holy Name. Currently, he serves as clinical assistant professor of medicine at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And then we have Frank Mortimer. Many of you know him. He is Ridgewood's master beekeeper. He serves on the Parks and Rec Conservation Board and as liaison to the Green Ridgewood Advisory Committee. Frank is an adjunct instructor at Cornell University in the Master Beekeeping Program, and he has led beekeeping seminars all across the Northeast and at the New York Botanical Garden. His knowledge of entomology is what prompted him to spearhead No Mow May in Ridgewood, which I know many of you participated in. And then our last speaker will be Steve Weiss, who is a landscaper whose crew works in Bergen County and in Rockland County. And he also has a business in West Nyack called EcoQuip, which is a store that sells only electric lawn care equipment. He also advises landscapers on how to transition from gas-powered equipment to battery-powered equipment. And so with that, I will ask people to please silence your phones, if you will, and I will turn it over first to Nancy Adams, Township Committee Woman Nancy Adams. I guess the question is, you've had this ban in place for on gas-powered leaf blowers since January 1st of this year. How's it going?
Well, so far we're entering the season that'll be critical in seeing how it's going and how it's responded to. I will say it's not the beginning of our ban. We had a pilot seasonal ban for June, July, and August in 2016. After that, we formed a subcommittee of people, residents for and against, and we did research. We looked up, we did a lot of information gathering, a lot of stats, all that kind of stuff, and sort of analyze how the 3-month ban went that summer. We also interviewed individually, not in a group, about a half dozen or so landscaping companies, the owners of those companies, to see what their issues were. So out of that, we drafted an ordinance the following in 2017 that went into effect for a longer period till the end of September. And each year we modified the ordinance a little bit to the last time before the year-round ordinance, it went May 1st through September 30th. And we were thinking about just having what you're proposing, 2 months in the fall and 2 months in the spring. And then we were asked by a group of residents who came and to our meeting and basically asked us the question, if you're doing this because it's bad in so many ways to have these machines operating in such a closely, densely populated community, why would we ever allow them? And honestly, we had a unanimous vote to go ahead and ban them year round. That was March of 2022 when we passed the ordinance that took effect January 1 of 2023. So after that, March 7th, we had a group of landscapers come to our township committee meeting and asked for 2 months for us to allow them 2 months in the fall this year. Luckily, we had a majority of us who wanted to wait, at least give the year-round ban a year round to analyze it. So we did not say yes to that request. But in the request, the landscapers said, and mind you, there's been hours and hours and hours of public comment on this in every derivation, every year that we've been working on this. And with that request, they said, we don't need them in the spring, we don't need them in the summer, but we really, really need them in the fall. And that was kind of ironic, given that for years we were told it was an essential piece of equipment that they needed all the time. So I think there's like a learning curve. A friend of mine is a landscaper in West Orange, and he and I talked about, he actually said, please don't do no mow again this year. And I said, it's not an ordinance, it's just a policy to get people to kind of understand pollinators. But we did talk about the battery operated equipment, because one of the main issues that we hear is the batteries die too quickly, the batteries are expensive, we can't do the properties. So I think what needs to happen is for landscaping companies and people who own them, although they're just doing their own yard, it's not quite the same, to rethink how they're used. Currently, for gas leaf blowers, in my experience, probably most people's, the workers put them on, and especially in the fall, and they start at the back of the property and they blow nonstop, full throttle all the way to the street, which is one of the reasons people started hating them, not the landscapers, the noise. So it's just overwhelming and overpowering, and actually was contrary to the guidelines that the National Landscaper Association in their white paper on their website in 2016 had. Rarely, if ever, full throttle, no more than one gas-powered leaf blower on a property, not within 10 feet of doors, windows, and walls. And so I think all of us have sort of experienced the opposite. When we were talking about the seasonal ban, we did get, we got sued by the New Jersey Landscaper Association. We also, the National Landscaper Association was asked by the New Jersey Landscape Association to take that white paper off their website, but I have a PDF if anyone wants it. So that it is sort of counterintuitive to change the way people are used to working, but there needs to be some more training on the part of the landscape company owners for their workers to do it in such a way that reserves battery power, do it sort of the way one would in the past rake their yard, go in the back, rake it onto a tarp, drag it out to the front, and those kinds of things, and that preserves battery power, and just use them when they're necessary and not for the whole yard, just regardless of if there's any leaves that you're blowing. There's a lot of times what you see with when you pass by a crew out on, doing a property, they're just kind of going in the street and they're just blowing, and those kinds of behaviors not only pollute more, and they also make other people like wonder why they're even doing them, because there are externalities involved with the use of gas-powered leaf blowers that aren't a thing in with quieter equipment. If one of the complaints we got was, you can't tell me how to maintain my property. And the answer is, yeah, when it's disturbing other people, or it's disturbing, the environment, or blowing off all the topsoil, or blowing into our sewer system. There's all sorts of reasons that there are externalities involved with the use of this particular piece of equipment that impacts people other than those who live at that property. So, I mean, there's a lot. I can go on forever, and I don't want to do that, but suffice to say that we were careful to work with the landscapers in the beginning, but we also need them to be willing to work with us. Some of the things that they said was the prices would go up, and they did not. There are also 100 landscapers registered in the township of Maplewood. So if neighbor says, I'm not, a few have said they're not going to work at Maplewood anymore, but there are plenty of other companies to take their place. So I think the writing is on the wall, and I think transitioning is probably the best choice, so that the business can be maintained, and nobody's trying to hurt anybody's business, but the amount of damage that these things do, not only to the properties themselves from environmental basis, but and to the animals and pollinators, but also to the workers themselves. A big issue we had was a social justice issue, meaning they couldn't, we put in our ordinance for when they were permitted that the company had to provide hearing and breathing equipment for the workers to use to protect them. And we also, through our landscaper interviews, one of the things we did was to have pretty high fines for using gas leaf blowers when they were not permitted. And that was a suggestion by a couple landscapers who were following the pilot ordinance, and were frustrated because others were not, because it was only $100. If they got caught, they were just going to eat it. Or some of their customers would say, just do it. If you get a ticket, I'll pay it. So our fines are $500 for the first offense, $1,000 for the second offense, and $1,500 for every offense thereafter in a year. And that's been effective, as well as how we allow residents to report offenses. One of the things that I think has been well known in the landscape company community for a long time is that they can be done by the time someone actually reaches code enforcement. The chance of them getting caught is slim to none. So our prosecutor has shown that using a cell phone with time and date stamp, take a picture of the use, take a picture of the truck or the license plate, and submit that to the township, and they will be sent a summons. And that is held up in court. So you can stop me whenever you want.
Is your code enforcer or your compliance officer able to issue summonses?
Yes. With submissions by email or through the website of the cell phone, evidence seems to be effective enough, because they're time and date stamped, and then you just submit the address where it happened.
Does the person who took the picture have to appear in court?
Generally, no, that's sufficient. We haven't even had anybody had to appear in court. So the reason that's important is because, as we know with lots of ordinances, especially controversial ones, if you're not tenacious and you don't enforce them, then it's not gonna stand. And one of the reasons we've been doing this for 7 years now is because we've been tenacious about it. And our director of code enforcement department is also careful about making sure he follows up with things like that. So that's part of it's really the only way success. Montclair had an ordinance for a couple decades, but it was known that it wasn't enforced, so it was kind of didn't matter. But in Maplewood, they love us or hate us, we enforce it, and it's well known that we do.
Has it been enforced with residents as well as landscapers?
Yeah, but people are less likely to, they might talk to their next door neighbor and say, that's illegal now, you can't do that, but they're generally not going to turn in their next door neighbor unless they don't like them. But, but yeah, so that, I don't know of any residents who have gotten ticketed for it.
Thank you. Dr. Tibb, I would like to ask you, how does gas power leaf blowing affect human health?
So in full disclosure, I have no stock in any battery-powered company. So I'm here purely to talk about the public health effects of gas-powered leaf blowers. I have again, no conflict of interest with Ridgewood as a town. I'm just a practicing physician in the neighborhood in Paramus, New Jersey. So the effects of gasoline and diesel combustion on respiratory health is very well known. And before I come to that, I think many of you all know that we are in the middle of the biggest epidemic of asthma that we've ever seen in the history of the world. And actually, New Jersey is at the center of it. The number of new cases with asthma and airway disease of the lungs is on the rise, and it's affecting people or across the spectrum, right from childhood disease, which is common and has been known because of more respiratory infections, to new onset disease in people who are well into their 60s, 70s, and even 80s. And I have patients above 100, and we're not going to get there. But we are really in the middle of the biggest epidemic of asthma. So, I want to ask everybody the question, why would anybody want to do this to themselves? So, gas-powered leaf blowers not only have, it's a dual effect, right? It's like a double whammy. It's not only the effects of incomplete combustion with two-stroke engines, it's two-stroke leaf blowers. It's also aerosolization of all the particles, which is more. I know that battery-powered leaf blowers can also do the same thing, but with gas-powered, it is more. It can be widespread to greater distances, and these particles are inhaled not only by young children, animals. It's harmful again across the spectrum. There are many harmful effects. There was a whole study about gasoline and diesel powered cars. I'm just digressing a little bit, on human health in the United Kingdom many years ago. I think this was in 2006 or 7. And what they studied was the effect of gasoline and diesel cars in the city of London, and people who stayed very close to the highway compared to people who stayed far away. And they realized there was a drop in 8% lung capacity in people who were very close to vehicle exhaust. In fact, Mount Sinai has an entire research laboratory where they actually have piped in gasoline particles or exhaust into animal laboratories and looking at effects on animals. And clearly, there's tremendous decrease in lung function, pneumonitis, respiratory insufficiency across the spectrum. So that's the effect of gas and diesel-powered or gasoline-powered leaf blowers. Then is aerosolization of particles. We have such a heavy allergen load in New Jersey that it is unremarkable. It really ranks number 1. I'm not talking about top 10, number 1 in the United States in looking at allergen burden on human health and respiratory diseases. And by aerosolizing particles, we're not really helping. So I know we just went through, COVID and everybody's worried about, but I think the effects of asthma on human health is going to just increase with time, and leaf blowers are only contributing to it. Do battery-powered leaf blowers contribute, or electric? They do in some way, right? It's the same thing. But I think they are to a lesser extent than gas-powered leaf blowers. Of course, old style raking is the best, but I don't know whether that's going to be agreeable to many. So it's a change, it's a transition. Battery's an issue. We already spoke about it, but again, just like electric cars. I don't know how many people have electric cars here. I remember when I bought my electric car 4 years ago in a town in Bergen County. I'm not going to name the town. There were few. I mean, like every intersection, maybe we'll see once in a while. Today, I think like every other household, and some of it has to do with the number of credits or incentives that the state is providing. And as many know, there is a commitment to transition to all new cars sold in New Jersey by 2035 should be electric. So also, I think it's a transition. And I think if we commit ourselves that we want to protect, it doesn't matter what the cost is, it doesn't matter what the neighbor says. If we want to protect our own health, then we are going to go with something better. I did want to touch upon effects on health when it comes to non-respiratory disease. There's many published articles on cardiovascular health, on cognition. We have a lot of elderly in Bergen County. I think we very well know that, especially in this area, and it clearly affects cognition and orientation, and that has been clearly published and studied in multiple different ways. There's also been effects and studies with autism. I don't know whether these have been very good randomized studies, but clearly published and saying, pregnant women exposed to pollutants or, again, aerosolized particles can have effects on their unborn child. In fact, there were some studies done on school buses, and I don't remember in which year, but I think in the last, maybe in the last decade, on school buses and looking at kids traveling in school buses and exposing them by opening the windows to just the combustion exhaust from their buses or where they travel, and what was the effect on their scores in class, their math scores, and clearly eliminating that improved their math scores. And that was a very well done study. It was studied for 12 weeks, and then they eliminated and they studied 12 weeks after. I'm happy to share some of these articles with you if you feel like. So that's really what I have to say.
Doctor, I don't know if you feel that this is in your area of specialty, but can you tell us anything about how leaf blowing, with or without gas, affects people's hearing?
Nancy just mentioned to me. So hearing, definitely. So I think the noise from gas-powered leaf blowers also is is a big public health hazard. As you know, that the upper limit of human hearing, I think the safest is at about 50 decibels, and with gas-powered leaf blowers, we can go right up to 100 or 120 decibels, and up to a distance of 30 meters. Actually, not 30 feet, 30 meters. So you can really go down the street, and people can hear the noise of, and that clearly affects hearing. What effect, what degree? I definitely feel you should consult an ENT doctor, but clearly the distances traveled with noise is tremendous with gas-powered leaf blowers.
Thank you. We'll go now to, and do send me those studies that you mentioned, and I'll make them available to people here. Mr. Mortimer, can you tell us about the effect of gas-powered leaf blowers on our environment?
Sure. And I wanted to do some research on this so I could not just make an opinion, but based on actually articles that I wrote. So I do have something I'm going to read. But essentially, it boils down to two different things. And this is in relation to pollinators. And the reason pollinators are important is because they help our environment and help our plants. So it comes down to pollution and habitat. So these are some quotes that I found. The inefficient two-stroke engine of the gas leaf blower produces more pollution than any other lawn equipment. Up to 30% of their gas goes directly unburnt into the atmosphere, producing greenhouse gases that contribute to global climate change. And climate change is a big deal for pollinators. Like there was a story that I was quoted in the northjersey.com back in the spring. And because we had such a weird winter where it was kind of hot and super cold, kind of hot, super cold, that every time those kind of changes happen, then that specifically, I'll say honeybees will come out when it gets hot, and when they come back in, they may not be able to reform the cluster and survive the winter because of those changes. So climate change has a direct impact on pollinators. Another one, some of these are just astounding. 1 hour of gas leaf blower operation is equivalent to 40 cars idling for 1 hour. The two-stroke engine of leaf blowers causes 35 times more ozone pollution than a regular car. So when you hear these, that's why we're singling out the two-stroke engine, because they're that much dirtier than every other type of engine. This next one is from Cornell's Co-op Extension, so definitely a reputable source. Every time a gas leaf blower is filled with gasoline, approximately 2 ounces spill. That adds up to 17 million gallons of gas spilled each year, which is over 50% more than the amount spilled by the Exxon Valdez. Think about that. And all that stuff that spills goes into the air, the soil, and the water supply. So it's poisoning us in 3 different ways. And then this is interesting too. There, in 2011, there was a test that found two-stroke engine gas leaf blowers generated 23 times the carbon monoxide and nearly 300 times more non-methane hydrocarbons than a high-performing pickup truck. That's the, now listen to this. That's equal to 4,000 miles, or driving from Texas to Alaska for every half hour of leaf blowing. Crazy. So in addition to all the pollution and how that impacts not just pollinators, but all of us, specifically, now this is where I put on the bee man hat, is the habitat that's impacted for pollinators. And interestingly enough, so as most of us know, Ridgewood was the first bee city USA in New Jersey, and actually the one in the Northeast. And so that's where the No Mow May initiative, a lot of it came from. Just today in my mailbox from Bee City, they have a new thing for the fall called Leave the Leaves. And so that's exactly what this also has to do with. Many of the insects that we love to attract, whether these native plants, require safe habitat for the winter. For example, bumblebees burrow under the ground and need leaves for extra protection from the cold. The vast majority, and notice I'm not talking about honeybees throughout any of this, the vast majority of butterflies and moths overwinter in the landscape as eggs, caterpillars, chrysalises, or adults. But only the warmest climates can these butterflies survive without using leaf litter to winter over. And so one of the most valuable things that we can do to support our pollinators is to provide them with some winter cover they need in the form of fall leaves and standing dead plant material. So for me, again, it's like what I would like to see, in the future is that our concept, and I mean culturally, our concept of what a lawn looks like needs to change. And we need to get to a more natural environment where things can grow, things can sit, and then that'll help the pollinators, which will in turn help our environment. And that's it for me.
Are other insects like fireflies affected by leaf blowing? And what about birds and bats?
So I don't know specifically about lightning bugs. I apologize, but absolutely birds are. And this is like some of this stuff we also talked about with No Mow May, is that a lot of these insects, especially these ones that I just mentioned that use this stuff to overwinter, when they come out, that's one of the first foods for birds. So as the birds migrate back, they need to eat. So if we create habitat, then we are feeding the birds.
And now I turn it over to you, Steve Weiss. How can landscapers transition to battery-powered leaf blowers, and should they?
I'd just like to say, being on both sides of the fence with being a landscape contractor and having an all battery operated equipment store, I'm hearing the pros and cons from, New York, New Jersey, the tri-state area, all the way out to California.
Yeah, hold the mic
Oh,
up.
sorry. Is that better? So I'm hearing the pros and cons from, the tri-state area all the way out to California. The transition specifically for my company, I'm a small company. I chose to do it before it was forced on me. My guys, they spill a lot of gas. Not stopping at the pump has been, I see the difference on my bottom line for the amount of gas consumption, even though it's just been handheld items. Um, the bigger companies that want to transition into this stuff, it's harder because of the expense. So I see it as paying for your fuel up front. But again, for me to transition as a small company for, let's call it $10,000 with a handful of guys to somebody that has 50 guys, it's a big difference. So, and plus the fact that it's being forced upon us. I think the power is there. For the most part, when we do a fall cleanup, we're using other tools and ground blowers and tarps and vacuums. So I haven't seen that much of a difference with that much time being added with using the battery backpacks. Yeah, the runtime is, it's easy to just pour gas out of a 5-gallon can that's in your truck, instead of, waiting for batteries to charge or making the investment to charge these batteries. I mean, a battery backpack blower is roughly 2.5 times the cost of its gas counterpart. But you will see that ROI within, 2 years for the purchase that you made without the maintenance on it and the gas. I think the average gas backpack, they say, is at least $1,000 a year in gas. So again, getting back to me, my guys at first they were a little hesitant, but now they love it. And again, it's a lot quieter. My clients like it a lot better. It's cleaner, and we've just learned to adapt with it. So
Do you use two-stroke engines for the big fall cleanup?
So I do. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna throw that stuff in the garbage. I think there needs to be, if they're going full battery bans, there should be some type of buyback program. I use them because I have them, and I invested in some backpacks, but I don't have enough of the battery, to do what I need to do for the fall. And during the season, it's the same as well. I have them, I use them except for the towns that there are bans, but there's no need after the real major cleanups to, with people complaining about the battery, the power, the handhelds are sometimes just as strong as the backpacks. So for blowing off a hardscape or a driveway or a curb line, the handhelds are fine and at a reasonable cost as well. Not necessarily, the thing with the handhelds, if you're doing, a 10-acre or 20-acre, industrial building, you're not walking around with just a handheld. Your arm's going to fall off. But they have just as much power for a fraction of the cost.
Wait, you need
You were talking about mulching the leaves. We're shifting from backpacks though, but I mean, listen, it's less, but Ridgewood is a nice area. People don't want to see their leaves left on their property. They want it clean. I mean, listen, I'm calling it like it is. If they mulch them up and they want them left in the beds, you gotta, maybe they'll do that. I understand what you're saying with the bees and the insects, but a lot of people are paying for a service to have their properties look pristine, and I think it's going to take a little while, for people to change their minds on so much at one time. But, mulching is a good thing. If you're in a heavily, leaf litter area on your property, it's not gonna look very nice for the holidays.
When your two-stroke backpack leaf blowers have reached the end of their lives, will you replace them with the same, or will you?
No,
buy
I don't
battery?
intend to buy any more gas backpacks. I wind up throwing them out every 2 to 3 years, whether the guys aren't, making the mix right, or whether it's just, the little maintenance on them. It just sooner or later they all crap out. And again, I understand the backpacks the batteries are a lot more expensive, but the battery backpacks that I've had for almost 4 years, I haven't changed the battery in them, and I've done zero maintenance on them. So those things have paid for themselves tenfold.
How long does a charge last on a commercial grade battery powered backpack?
So it's all different. So for example, I'm at the moment, I'm interested, or we use Makita and the Husqvarnas. The Makita backpack, when you sit there and hold the trigger, you can get 3 to 4 hours of runtime. That's what we're experiencing right now. Husqvarna, maybe a little bit less than that. Some of these backpacks have turbo buttons on them. You press those and you're draining that thing in like less than a half hour. I don't even know why they put them on there. So it's a wide range, but 4 hours is the most that we've seen so far. And the battery packs are the expense of the component. I mean, they're going for like, 12 to 1,300 just for the battery. So, you have to get, if you want to make it through a day on one backpack doing, what you're doing for cleanups, you got to get 2 of those, or 3 if you're, so it's an expense.
Have you tried to recycle a battery yet? I think
No.
okay.
We've had people come into the store where we've given them to our reps, and I know there's more recycling programs coming down the road. So yeah, but we just have been giving them back to our reps, and then they're recycling them, or I don't know what they're doing.
Have you spoken with the manufacturers of battery-powered equipment and discussed with them the demand that's out there for something more powerful?
Yes, they're constantly working to improve their tools. Nothing's on the horizon that I know, as far as, some of the 800 or 850 CFMs for, for what's out there. They're close, but again, I don't know. But, again, with the power, when you're doing cleanups and you have ground blowers and stand-on ground blowers now, and, every time I've done a cleanup, we're always doing it, making piles and either leaf sucking them or tarping them, or, something. So as far as the power not being there, I think it is, in my opinion.
I've heard about retrofitting landscapers' trucks so that the batteries can be charging during the day, not having to wait until they get back to the shop. Can you tell us about that?
Well, there are solar solutions on trailers, but most of the batteries, they take a good half hour to 45 minutes to charge. So you really need to invest in batteries to do the job right, in my opinion. There's a ton of solutions coming out. A big thing is, if you're investing in this much battery operated equipment, and then when you move on to the lawn mowers, which are even bigger and take more power, can your shop handle it? And what happens with the guy that just, rents a space from somebody who doesn't even have any power, to take 30 batteries back to your house, and it's but there are solutions on the horizon. I do know of a company that is outfitting solar panels on their trucks and on their trailers, and he plugs in at night, and then everything is pretty much charged up for the day. But he's also a small company, so the bigger companies, I think, are going to have a little bit of a tougher time.
Thank you. Larissa, do we have questions? Okay, the first question is, will this ordinance apply to two-cycle gas-powered or all gas-powered leaf blowers? There are four-cycled backpack gas-powered leaf blowers available. The way it's written right now, it would not apply to four-stroke engines. As I think I mentioned, a cycle is down and up for a piston, and so that is two-stroke, and a four-stroke actually would be two cycles. So the way it's written right now, we would have to distinguish by looking at a piece of equipment whether it's four-stroke or two-stroke, and that's not as easy as it sounds. So it becomes a problem for enforcement. But also the four-stroke are better in terms of less pollution, but they're almost as loud as the two-stroke. Maybe they're a little less loud, but they're not like a battery-powered leaf blower. So the way it's written now, it's a real baby step. And depending on what the manufacturers come out with and what our conversation evolves into, it might change. So next, why are we so worried about gas-powered leaf blowers? Why not limit pesticides and lawn chemicals instead? Does anybody on the panel want to answer that?
Just, I guess my response would be, as the doctor just said a little while ago, that New Jersey's not even going to sell anything but electric cars by 2035. So I often wonder, why are we fighting for this dirtiest of engines so hard when we're transitioning to electric in everything? And regulating one thing doesn't stop you from regulating other things, but there's also the state, because they have no leaf blower statute or that supersedes us as municipality, whereas they do in the DEP have laws regulating pesticides that we as a municipality cannot supersede.
Right, so we can't exceed what integrated pest management tells us to spread in terms of chemicals or pesticides. And similarly with automobiles, we have catalytic converters that make them much more efficient than a two-stroke engine.
Yeah, they're also, once a car is manufactured, we have emissions tests that are required on a regular basis, and that doesn't apply to these engines for the most part.
Yep. And I would encourage people to use fewer pesticides and chemicals on their lawns also. A comment, so maybe this is not a question. The gas-powered blowers have, no exaggeration, moved me to tears and make me want to move out of Ridgewood. Sounds like Maplewood might be a good a good home. I can't quite read it. I otherwise love my home in Ridgewood.
I got to say, when I go to work in Summit, and sometimes I take my dog to my office, and if I'm walking my dog and I hear gas leaf blowers, and yeah, it raises my blood pressure almost immediately as well. And then I'm like, dang, all these 7 years of work in my town 6 miles away, and here I am. So,
Is it quieter now in Maplewood? I mean,
Oh,
that's a subjective.
no, it's definitely quieter. We had people coming out to our meetings, thanking us in the spring because they could let their kids go out and play and not have to worry about the barrage. A lot of our properties are 50 by 150 lots. And so when you, because of the decibel level of the two-stroke battery backpack or two-stroke engine backpack blower, it travels farther and it penetrates doors, windows, and walls. So you can't really shut it out. So one down the block, 50 houses away, it ricochets off. So it can be pretty overwhelming.
Two questions. One, why are four-stroke leaf blowers not included in the restriction? I understand they are also loud. And how do you tell the difference? So I think did I already address that? Yeah. Okay. Two, is there a place or organization to apply for grants for the landscapers to buy battery-powered equipment? Does anybody know the answer to that one?
Not that I know of. We did talk with Home Depot in Union Township, just over the border from Maplewood, but they were giving minimal kind of discount, nothing substantial. So that's something that had I the time, I might research, but I know some people look into it. I would look at resources on the AGSA website, American Green Zone Alliance, might have some information. Quietcommunities.org might have information. I know they have a lot of white papers with information.
So also when you go to your local dealer or somebody like EcoQuip, they offer fleet programs and options like that. There's source well bidding if you're municipality or governmental, but for a lot of mostly commercial, residential, not so much. But the commercial industry, there's fleet program prices throughout most of the manufacturers.
Sure.
So to be real specific about the difference between two-stroke and four-stroke is that the two-cycle engines are where you have to mix the oil in with the gas. And then so your car and maybe your lawnmower, there's a separate place to put the oil, which then lubricates the engine. And because the oil's in with the gas, that's why it's so dirty. And so the reason that we're singling out the two-stroke, as all the research I did showed, is those are specifically the ones that contribute the most problems to the environment. So they're a dirtier engine.
I will just say for the municipality, we started transitioning away. Our DPW no longer uses gas-powered leaf blowers. Back in 2016, we said when they needed new equipment, they were to buy battery operated, and now they're all battery operated. And plus they're maintaining parks. You really don't need a lot of blowing in parks, although they do it to keep those leaves away.
I did want to ask Mr. Weiss, you used the term CFM. Can you explain to the audience what that means?
It's just the power behind the blowers, with the not decibels, but it's really just the power behind what the air power.
Okay, another question. What about two-stroke trimmers and landscape heavy duty lawnmowers regarding noise and pollution? I think you're probably the best to answer that question.
I mean, as far as battery to the, yeah, are we talking about regulating or what?
Let's assume that this questioner wanted us to ask about why not regulate the trimmers and the lawnmowers as
So
well.
given, as you can see, how much work it is to do the gas-powered leaf blowers. Maybe eventually we'll get there, but I don't think we would have gotten anywhere if we had gone to gas equipment. I mean, residentially, residents should really consider, I mean, so much less expensive to just have a battery-operated lawnmower. And I would bring back, using your children to do chores. No offense to the landscapers, but there is a little bit of loss of that in the communities these days. So it's that's why I may not run again.
Yeah, it used to be you would hire the kid next door to rake your leaves.
Right. We also used to only rake the leaves when they all fell off the tree. And then, you put them in a pile and then you let your kids jump in them and then you put them at the curb. So
That was fun.
yeah, there's just different practices. So, and by the way, people who don't want to do their own lawn, that's perfectly fine. You can hire somebody to do it. You can also, they work for you. So you can ask them, please don't use gas leaf blowers on my property. And I'm okay with some stray leaves or blades of grass. So, talk to the people you employ and tell them what you want.
Will the village itself serve as a role model by stopping its own use of two-stroke engines itself? That is the goal. And that is what we were aiming for, okay? I have spoken with the Parks Department, and it is problematic, but if the ordinance were passed, they would abide by the same thing.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, they have to. In my mind, we have to follow our
Right.
own laws.
And that also is, this was a compromise. When I first proposed a ban to the department heads, they said, we can't work with this. We can't get our work done. We would have to hire more people. And so that's when I said, well, how about four-stroke? Can you get this done? Can you get your work done with a four-stroke? And that's how we came to this compromise.
Yeah, I will say that they, another place where gas leaf blowers are used municipally is paving streets to blow off the pebbles and everything. Rich, I'm talking about, before you pave, right? So we were able to have companies that we contracted with use battery blowers when they were about to pave a street. So.
I'm not sure I can read the handwriting here. Why not extend the ordinance to two-stroke string trimmers and other two-stroke equipment, similar pollution and noise issues? Well, as Ms. Adams said, this is hard enough. Are there any incentives to transition and exchange a gas-powered blower for a battery-powered blower? I believe there's something in the legislature pending as a buyback.
One of our guests here tonight pointed this out to me. I appreciate it. There's a bill that has been introduced that directs the Board of Public Utilities to create a rebate program for buying electric or battery-powered leaf blowers. I don't know if that applies just to anybody who's buying one or to registered landscapers, but that there's a proposed bill. So contact your local legislature.
The other bill that's pending in the legislature is to prohibit the sale of gas-powered leaf blowers 4 years hence from the effective date of the bill, of the law, and then it might be 3 years, and then 5 years hence approximately to prohibit the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. So it's a long-term solution. Why would this not be put on the ballot for the residents to vote on it? Well, there's an election coming up in November. We would have had to have something on the ballot back in July or August. We've missed that date. And I also don't think this is appropriate for a referendum.
It's also, you elect your local elected officials to do this work. And a referendum can be put on with a certain number of signatures by residents by a certain date. You'd have to ask your clerk what the dates are and how many. In Maplewood, we had a proposal for bond ordinance that needed a supermajority of the township committee and for AstroTurf field in one of our parks that is pretty much just fields and in the most densely populated neighborhood. So long story short, I voted no, and they had 4 votes in favor. A group of residents managed to get enough signatures for it to go on referendum, and it was voted down 2-1. So
I'm sorry, the next, whoever wrote this, I can't read the second question. Have you had to raise your rates since converting? I guess that's addressed to Mr. Weiss.
I didn't, because I did it slowly. You know, it's a tough question. If you want to, you know, if you're looking to make your money back for the investment that you just, you know, listen, it's all on scale also. You know, if you're going out and spending a couple $1,000s to get you through, you know, when there's a ban, you know, it's an opinionated question. I haven't. I'm a small company. I wanted to keep my clients, and I didn't go out and you know, drop the mother load on all this battery equipment. You know, people, I hear people are. You know, I was giving you an example. Somebody in Montclair went from, I think, 75 an hour, wrote a letter to his clients that he's going to 155 an hour. I think he's going to get laughed off of every client list that he has. And like you said, there's too many of us out here in the landscape industry. But you know, it depends on relationships with clients. I think if you go up to your client and say, listen, there's a ban, you know, whether or not you voted for it, I just had to go out and spend X amount of dollars, you know, there's going to be, you know, I'm probably going to be putting a little surcharge on there. People did it for fuel. So why not do it for battery, or, you know, or just say, you know, I've been doing your property for X amount of years. It normally is X amount, you know, if I go, I know how long it takes me. If it takes me this much longer, I'm going to need to, you know, do that. But I also think, besides, you know, the price thing, is that there's going to be a lot of opportunity, because this is just hitting the world so hard with the battery operated equipment that, you know, all the people that are, you know, oh, I'll take the fine that because I'm not going to buy this, or I think there's going to be tremendous opportunity out here for people that just want, you know, everybody wants, you know, what either the next big thing, or, you know, what's talked about most. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for, you know, people that are 100% battery operated to get into some, you know, good contracts.
Yeah, can you?
So if I can take a little of the heat off you. Sure, there's questions as to why this is introduced after a deadline for any referendum to get put on the ballot, is my understanding of the question. As I said, because, well, that's up to you to go. So ordinances are put on agendas for council meetings. They're on first reading, and then they're on second reading, and they have public comment. We had hours of public comment at every one of our meetings where we were amending our ordinance. So, you know, there is a process in democracy, and there are deadlines to put something on if you don't want this. And then if you don't like it, vote those who are proponents of it out of office. Say again? Really? No, that's actually the opposite of a dictatorship. So
Not everything not everything lends itself or is appropriate for a referendum. If it were, we'd be voting on every truck that the village buys. We would have had to wait to fix Ridgewood Water's PFAS problem. This way, the council voted to have a master plan and take care of PFAS in our water. You wait for a referendum on every measure that the government has to take, and nothing will get done. No, I'm sorry, we can't operate this way. Gary, you can just do it in writing. We have other questions here.
We get it. We know we have to transition. We're just asking for reasonable time for the technology to catch up. The technology simply isn't there.
That's not true, as you might have heard. The technology is there, and that's been an argument against banning this piece of equipment for as long as for at least 7 years that I've been talking about it in our town. And it does go through a democratic process. I can't tell you the number of hours that I've spent on this issue alone. In fact, I'm up here where I don't even live.
Okay, next question. Would this apply to residents who own or use two-stroke blowers or just to commercial contractors? No, this would apply to residents as well as to landscapers. That was already litigated. It cannot just apply to contractors. It has to apply to everybody, because otherwise it's a violation of the state constitution, which has a provision for equal protection of the laws. Next question. Do you know how many residents use two-stroke engines, backpack blowers? No, we don't have people register for that, so it's not something that the village tracks. Has the lawsuit or litigation been resolved in Maplewood? Ms. Adams, I guess you want to talk to that.
Yes, the township prevailed in the lawsuit entirely, including after it was decided in our favor. Just like many things, we can regulate all sorts of things. We regulate speed, we regulate, when you have your house painted, we regulate that it has to be tarped over when people are sanding the paint off to protect the workers and the environment and the population. So the courts decided that we can indeed regulate this piece of equipment, and we prevailed on the lawsuit, and we also prevailed on not paying the legal fees for the association.
Thank you. Is Ridgewood Fire Department prepared for the challenges lithium batteries present? I think that landscapers would need to store properly and in accordance with manufacturer's instructions. I gather that you're not supposed to stack lithium batteries. Is that true?
Stacking them, I mean, our manufacturers have cases for them. I mean, there's no law that I know of right now with, I know when you're driving around with gas tanks, you have to have them strapped down. I don't think there's any law. I was at a DOT, inspection thing for a township, and they didn't say anything on batteries, the way you're supposed to store them in the trailer, or stacking them or not. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, I know that our fire department does educational sessions several times a year for residents, and I can see where they would add this safety measures for lithium batteries. I can see where they would add that to their regular teaching.
Well, one quick thing. A lot of the batteries were catching fire because they were overheating. So I know a lot of the manufacturers now are putting in, they have little fans in the battery to keep them cool, even when they're charging. So the heat is the biggest problem for these batteries. So they started implementing fans inside the batteries to keep them cool.
Thank you. Working from home is very common. It is also a business. The noise of these machines significantly impacts my ability to conduct my business. Why should the use of these machines be allowed to override the business interests of others, especially as there are quicker, quieter alternatives available? I don't know. Does anybody on the panel want to address that?
COVID messed it all up.
I think I mentioned that before, that the externalities involved and the way it affects the community and your neighbors and people who live there is, you know, a piece of this that needs to be considered. One thing I will say, when COVID did hit and the lockdown was March 2020, and at that time the seasonal ban began May 1st, I think. And we started getting calls and emails from people who used to commute into Manhattan every day and come home, and then all of a sudden they're working from home and hearing the thing that they thought was the stupidest law you could ever pass, until they realized what everyone who was staying home all day was subject to. So
This is a public health mandate, including for workers without access to health care. Full bans in Washington, D.C., Larchmont, New York, Maplewood, New Jersey, Montclair, New Jersey, Evansville, Illinois, White Plains. Why not Ridgewood? Public health is not a debate. I do want to take into account how we are affecting landscapers. It's not our goal to put landscapers out of business. I think that's the only response. Public health is otherwise very important. Does anybody on the panel want to address that?
Well, in my mind, as I said right in my opening statement, it's a no-brainer. You know, why would anybody want to be subjected to inhaling these particles, which include not only particles of dust but larvae of animals? That should be a absolute no-no. You know, so I don't think we should look at it as the town inflicting this. It should be like, what do we want for our own personal health? I do, I know there's a section of the crowd which is concerned about the technology, but I think there is a transition, and it's the phase of transition, and how that transition takes place. I think that's for the town and people in the town to decide. But I think this is coming down. If it's not today, it's come down tomorrow.
When will this ordinance go into effect? The way it is written now, it would say, if we discussed it at the meeting on the 27th, say it passed in October, it would not go into effect until May 16th, 2024. That's the way it's written right now. We did it that way because we knew that contractors buy their equipment over the winter, and we wanted to give them that lead time. That said, I see that Montclair passed their total ban on August 15th, and it's going into effect on August 15th. So I think that's a little draconian. I don't think that's really fair. So will the Q&A extend to 9 o'clock? No, they kick us out at 8:45. I think, an hour and 45 minutes is not enough time for us to get into every detail and really have all of you speak. So I think what's appropriate is for us to have another meeting so that everybody can bring up what they see on these issues, any solutions that they want to propose. So I think we should plan on another public meeting, maybe more in an open house kind of format.
Because I read all this stuff. That's
Well, we'll do that at the next meeting for sure. Why not ban two-stroke mowers? They create more noise and pollution. Two-stroke mowers, is there such a thing?
I'm sure there is. I've only used four-stroke. So you know, again, I'm not sure.
Why?
I'm sure there is, but you know, everything that I've used is four-stroke, and the commercial mowers that I use aren't.
Okay, the next question is, why not ban homeowners from running two-stroke mowers and blowers? I'm unaware of two-stroke mowers, and any regulation of two-stroke blowers would fall under this. Oh, we have a person here who says there was a two-stroke mower back in the 1970s. Okay, but it doesn't seem to be in popular use anymore. Do we have any more questions?
Pam, can I,
I just want to address one thing, that this is an informational panel tonight. It doesn't take the place of a public hearing or any other discussion that would happen in village council. This is really just an informational panel for everybody here.
We'll probably bring this up for discussion at a village council meeting, but as you know, public comment is not a really gratifying way to talk. But in some format, we should continue this discussion. Will this ordinance apply to tree service companies?
yes.
Yes, and it would also apply to gutter service companies, and I would suggest, like Maplewoods also applies to pesticide companies.
Yeah, for like the mosquito
Yeah.
ones, because they
Actually,
jerry rig a gas leaf blower, but they
Right.
use battery blowers now.
right.
I wish they didn't exist at all, but that's all.
And we did receive a comment from a mosquito company, and it's interesting. The first gas-powered leaf blower was invented for spreading pesticides by a guy who lived in Livingston, New Jersey. Okay. What do the landscapers' employees think about the proposed ban? Well, that's a good question. I haven't spoken with them. Okay. I'm not sure about that. Actually, so we have what? 10 more minutes? How much more time do we have?
Pam,
Okay.
I have a HPC meeting that I have to
Yes.
be on in the car.
Okay.
on
We
my
have to
way
say
home.
goodbye
Say
to
goodbye.
Committeewoman
Yeah.
Adams. Thank you very much
Thank
for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Does anybody have a question for Dr. Tibb? Because otherwise, we'll let him go. Now, since you suggested it, I'll take one landscaper on the mic and one resident on the mic. Yeah. And if you could please limit your comment to 3 minutes.
Think I can do that. Hi, my name is Chris James. My company, Chris James Landscaping, has worked in Ridgewood, New Jersey since 1981, and I worked for a guy before that so I think I know the community pretty well. I don't think the industry as a whole is opposed to electric equipment at all. I know my organization has been using electric equipment to one degree or another for the last 5 or 6 years. Some of it is excellent. If you're a homeowner, I'd highly recommend you go out and buy yourself a 21-inch electric mower. If you got a 1/4 acre, it's a fine piece of equipment. I do have concerns that the panel tonight was pretty much stacked against the industry quite completely. You know, we've had issues, battery fires were discussed. We have a $25,000 electric mower that had a meltdown in our shop in Waldwick, and the only reason we did not have a catastrophic fire was that piece of equipment happened to be plugged into the charger and was grounded. We came in on a Monday morning to quite a stinky shop, let's put it that way. So I would recommend Ridgewood residents speak to their fire department. The batteries cannot freeze, so if you have an unheated garage in the winter, that can be an issue. They also have to be kept free of moisture. I think recycling is an issue that hasn't been discussed. A lithium-ion battery, 90% of that battery can be recycled 5 times. I hate to see thousands of batteries being just chucked in the dumpster. As far as the window to use gas-powered 2-cycle equipment, I know the industry is pushing for March 1st to May 31st and October 15th to December 31st. That way, if we have a late spring, we have time to catch up in late April, May. And if we have an early spring, we can get out there as of March 1 and hit the ground running. Same thing in the fall. I think we all remembered the Halloween snowstorm a few years ago. We were still out cleaning up leaves in January. It's your community, so you have to decide how you want your community to look. But from an industry standpoint, we have to deal with Mother Nature every year, and we need the opportunity to service our residents. Now, as far as costs, again, I've worked in this community for 40-something years. Yes, we've had fuel surcharges and we've had price increases, especially the last couple of years with everything going through the roof. You know, I have to be candid. As a business owner, I've done the cost analysis. I need a $12,000 upgrade to my electrical system in my shop, and I need to buy $48,000 worth of electric back blowers to comply with this ordinance. With that said, I work in 18 different towns, as many of the other companies here do. In fairness to those other 17 towns, I really can't pass that $60,000 investment on to the other 17 communities. We figured there's going to be about a 6 to 7% surcharge for at least 5 months a year to our Ridgewood clients. So example, if you pay $450 a month, I think it came out to about $27 a month. If that's acceptable to the Ridgewood community, then we're willing to help comply and meet, you know, ever-changing environments. But I think it needs to be a known cost, and I would definitely talk to your landscape professional. Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to come up and speak? You need to speak in the mic. Yeah, yeah.
I would speak as a resident. Yeah, I'm a resident. She had a question for him. Oh, okay.
I'm halfway.
Hi, I just was wondering, since you worked in 1981, you said?
Yeah,
So-
started in 78.
So the gas blowers weren't commonly used at that point, correct? They started out, I understand, in the 70s, and they really were not fully online as this necessary landscaping tool until sometime in the 80s. So in 1981, I'm just wondering how you were managing leaves.
All the way back to 1978, when I was still in high school, we used an Echo backblower called the PB9. It was a 2-cycle piece of equipment. I can sneeze probably more powerfully than the blower would actually work, but even back then it was 2-cycle. No, no.
And the other big thing I think is really important that no one seems to talk about, he tells us about all his costs. But what about the state? In no commercial gas blower you can buy. That is an awful lot of gas.
Thank you. I think that Mr. Weiss did talk about his gas save, how much he saved too. That, but actually, we're just want to keep focused on this event too, but yes.
So I'm a resident. I've been a resident of Ridgewood for 29 years. My name is Ronnie Cutter. I'm here with my husband. And I see this as a quality of life issue. We're retired. We're home. It has ruined, we've written to the council about this before. The noise is just basically ruining our lives. And you know what, we appreciate, the concerns of landscapers. We don't use a landscaper. I rake, actually. I rake the leaves in the fall, and I'm 72 years old. So it's not, for those who are so inclined, it's not impossible to do. So I think, obviously we have to balance the interests here, but our interest is in having a better quality of life in the town. And that's, it's the air pollution. It's the noise is just astounding. It ruins my fall, honestly, to go outside in the fall, which would be allowed, and hear nothing but loud leaf blower noise. I mean, the house across the street has a leaf blower. They have like 4 to 6 people at once using leaf blowers. So, it's just unbelievable. So I think this is just, from my point of view, it's a quality of life issue that we have to address with some sensitivity to those of you who are landscapers and those people who use landscapers. But we kind of have to do it because it's like ruining our lives. So that's where I am.
Anyone else? Was there somebody here who was an employee of a landscaper? I know I've seen landscapers and their crews wearing hearing protecting. Are you seeing them wearing masks during leaf blowing? So they may be protecting their ears, but they're not protecting their lungs? I'm not sure. Sure, come on up.
As far as PPE, it's mandated. As an employer, I'm required to provide my employees hearing equipment, hard hats, ear protection, chaps if they're using chainsaws. I would think most of the folks I've seen here tonight from the industry more than comply with that. As far as actual dust masks or N95 masks, my employees have options when they're doing routine maintenance. They don't have options when they do like dry cutting and or any kind of grinding work. They have to use an N95. It's written into our employee manual. I think as an owner, and I can speak for a good majority of the industry that's here tonight, it's in our vested interest to keep our employees safe and healthy for many reasons. The human factor is certainly the main reason, but workman's comp and liability, insurance. I'm not a big company and I spend 170 grand a year on insurance. So the last thing I need is hurt or sick employees.
Anyone else want to comment or give your experience?
I'm a resident and I sometimes work from home. And when the leaf blowers are blowing, including personal and professional, I can't concentrate. And I really walk around my home while I'm working with noise canceling headphones often. And that's really, it interferes with my ability to work, to have the constant noise. And it's many days out of the week.
We have a little bit of time, 5 or 10 minutes, if anybody else wants to comment. Yes.
I've lived in Ridgewood for more than 25 years. I rake my own leaves. I have a property that is loaded with trees. I rake every leaf. I have no lawn. I don't use any water outside except to water plants. And if this is really the problem that it is, then you know what? Everybody in Ridgewood has the ability to just say no. But people have their jobs and they have, all this stuff. And well, what's important? Your health, the environment, or making money, or not spending time outside doing yard work? I mean, it's, you just have to make a decision, and everybody can make that decision. And why doesn't the community have like raking parties? Like, why don't they enlist people and they just go around? And because my daughter went to school in Missouri, and the college students went around and raked up lawns in Rolla, Missouri. And Rolla, Missouri is a little bit bigger than Ridgewood, but yeah, the college students went out there and they raked leaves for people. Hey, why not?
I like that idea, a raking party. Yes,
Here, sir.
the mic's right next to you.
I don't really need a mic. I agree with the lady to, give the, anybody can do it.
Hold the mic next to your
I'm
mouth.
sorry.
We're recording. This is going to be. This is
I
being
agree with
recorded.
what the lady said, anybody can do it, okay? But if that's the case, then let people decide through the referendum if that's what they want to do.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Actually, I have a question for you. With a referendum, is there a time for public comment, or just go straight to the voters?
You have to get it on the ballot. There are certain statutory requirements. You have to meet the procedural steps. It
Right,
has
but
to
there's
have-
no like moment, like a moment like this, like where you have a moment where everybody can come in for public comment, like the way that you would with an ordinance, a proposed
No,
ordinance.
you vote.
Hi, I'm sorry. I know I've probably said too much tonight. I just want to say that I'm from Montclair. I was part of organizing and putting together the group of a resident-led grassroots effort over 10 town council meetings where we organized ourselves. We spoke up 5 to 10 of us at every single town council meeting, and we went from our seasonal limits to a full end of the gas leaf blower, which went into effect September 4th. I know you don't have seasonal limits yet. I want to also remind you that in Washington, D.C., they passed their law 3 years ahead. They were prehistoric. They did it in 2019. I've been in close contact with them. Their law went into effect January 22. So they were really out early on this. The equipment wasn't even what it is today. Landscapers will tell you, we've had landscapers tell us that a single electric blower costs $18,000. I think you can confirm that that is not accurate, that there's a lot of not clear information about what's possible. There's also a change in paradigm about how do you maintain a property. The idea about a clean yard is not devoid of leaves. Leaves are a really important piece of a cycle, and we were really trained by an industry to think that a clean yard didn't have any leaves, and we could work with our landscapers and the residents in a town and change what the customer expects, because that's the relationship that really needs to be talked about, because those of us who maintain our own yards using rakes, brooms, etc., know that it's possible. You don't have to disappear every last leaf. In fact, it's an ecological mistake. It's a travesty at this point. So I just want to encourage residents to start showing up to your town council meetings, make your voices heard. This is, regardless, if we want to say that this is a noise issue, people may not agree with that. If you want to say it's an environmental issue, but you don't care about the planet, then that may not be a great argument. It depends who's in your town, who's on your town council. But the one thing that I believe it was a physician, I apologize, I was a little late tonight, talked about, where there are proven dangerous health hazards. Public health is not negotiable. It's not something you think about and wonder if when's the right time to protect public health. And one of the analogies I will leave you with that we talked about all the time was the indoor smoking legislation. The bar owners, the restaurant owners, they were up in arms. Their industry wouldn't survive. They couldn't do it. They would never, their businesses would fail. Nobody would come. No, they wouldn't, it would all fall apart. The smokers, they didn't want to be without their cigarettes inside. And there was one thing that changed, and everyone ended up okay. Does anyone know what it was? No, it was the law. You pass a law, and that is when your community will start to transition and adapt. Until you have a law, there are too many opinions and ideas and fear-mongering and false narratives, and you need to begin with a law. So right now you're talking about having this in effect in May, and that means you're saying until May, we know we've got a really dangerous machine operating in our town, and it's okay, because we need till May to say no more, or then we're going to limit it. And then what you're saying is we have a really dangerous machine in our midst for 4 months out of the year, and that's okay. And so what we did in Montclair was we said, it's not okay. And we convinced our elected leaders that that was correct and it was the right thing to do. And it passed. And it was a lot of work. But what they did for us was show their commitment to public health. And I really hope that can happen in Ridgewood.
Those of you who are Ridgewood residents, would you favor a full ban of gas-powered leaf blowers? How many residents would oppose that? Significant minority. Okay. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate your contribution tonight. This was a very interesting discussion.
Thank you very much, everybody. This recording will also be available on our YouTube channel, probably not until Friday. And then I'll also try to add to that listing any attachments or any other documents that are shared with us that might be interesting to people. Thank you.